Ladies and gentlemen, it's not easy to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a 10-minute talk about a ferry, especially not when you're the media and information manager, but doesn't he look fresh today? I'll whip through his introduction so that we can keep on time. This is about a regional ferry that sails a 40-kilometre round trip between charges 7 times a day. This means the boat Ellen sails 7 times longer than any other electric ferry currently in operation. Halfdan will explain how a small island community of 6,000 people managed to design and build a ferry, and he'll present the numbers and the data from the recent evaluation report published after the first year of operation. It shows that Ellen can reduce greenhouse gas emissions significantly, but what about the economy? As you'll see, the economic figures might come as a surprise. It turns out that sailing fully electric is a great choice for more than environmental reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Halfdan Abrahamsen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I was, of course, very happy to get up much earlier than I usually do to attend this great event. So let me share my presentation here. This is here you can see the fully electric ferry Ellen, the E-ferry Ellen, and you can see my contact information. And our web page includes a few Danish special characters, so feel free to email me on that address, and I will link you up also with our final evaluation report if you're interested. 140 pages of pretty dense reading with a lot of statistics. We sail between 2 islands. You can see the small island that is circled, and right to the left of it is Als, where we sail to. We call ourselves, where we live, we call it the Danish Caribbean, but it is actually a coincidence that our flag is looks very Jamaican here. The background for how Ellen could happen here on our small island with only 6,000 people is really that there's been, I would almost say, a tradition of developing renewable energy. And the special thing is, the reason I think it's important to mention is that it has been a cooperative effort, pretty much. So we produce more wind than we use, and of course that goes straight into Ellen. And that means that we can actually sail emission free, and that wind is comes from our 6 2-megawatt windmills, which are collaboratively owned, and you can buy shares. That's I have written a web address here, so you can see for yourself if you'd like it. It's very simple, but it's where people can share or sell, buy and share shares. And that way the fund behind it gains more money to develop more renewable energy, and what is most of all important, we get local cooperation from citizens, rather than just people being annoyed that some big company far off the island is making a lot of money on ruining our view. When you own the electricity yourself, windmills actually look pretty great. So that's been our experience, and we also did the same thing with the district heating, which is really based on sun and other renewable or CO2 neutral fuels. The ferry I'm talking about is a so-called ROPAX ferry. It's a medium-sized ferry, so it's not just your local short crossing. This is actually an actual passenger ferry. It can take 30 cars besides a lot of passengers, 196. And we cruise at 12.6 knots, which is pretty typical for a modern ferry like that. But it's worth mentioning that the crossing actually was reduced with 10% after we replaced the old diesel from the 70s. So we are not giving the passengers a poorer service. We are giving the passengers a better service in many ways. Now, to achieve this, we had to design a very hydrodynamic ship, and it's designed here on Ærø and is built here on Ærø. And the designer comes from a sailing tradition, and he was inspired by sailing ships. So it's long and it's narrow, and it cuts really well through the water. The power supply was a big deal. You can see we have four 1 megawatt transformers at 1200 amps, and we paid a lot of money for hookups, 2.2 million Australian dollars. That was to get both these transformers, but also to get power delivered to these transformers from another transformer station. And what I'm my message in general is to people who are interested in sailing electric: you don't have to pay much more for the ferry at this point. But remember to save some money for the infrastructure on land if it doesn't exist already, because that will be almost half the bill. Now, the batteries are lithium batteries. We have 4.3 megawatt hours, and we have 840 batteries altogether. What we do is we keep these batteries in two separate engine rooms, and they're not just in two different engine rooms, they actually comprise two different systems. So one room is connected to one propulsion engine and one thruster, and vice versa. And that means that we have full redundancy. So we don't sail with an emergency generator and emergency engines or anything. We rely 100% on electricity. And for safety reasons, we completely separated the two electric systems. So one system can go down, we can sail home on the other system. And here's an engine, 1,000 horsepower, and yeah, it takes up a fifth of the space of a regular diesel, and it weighs about a fifth of a regular diesel. And that means we have room for the batteries. And of course, it's always a bit of an experience for people to see such an engine, and yet you can talk in the engine room. You don't actually need to wear head or ear protection. Now we sail currently. I think we sail 5 round trips a day. It depends a bit on the need. We can sail up to 7 times actually, the 40-kilometer round trip. And we do this by spot charging during the day. And we have a very hefty peak charge of 4 megawatts. It ramps down when we get to about 80% charge, and a bit earlier actually, but at 80%, that's where it really starts ramping down. But we can take up a lot of juice very quickly. And in the bottom of the screen, you can see that the orange curve is the ferry sailing. Sorry, the orange curve is a state of charge, and then as we sail, and we can see the state of charge drop, and then we get back to home port, and then the curve goes up just a little bit. That's where we spot charged, and then during the noon break, we get basically a complete recharge. But that means that we can maintain the same service as before and actually sail the passengers quicker. This is just to show that we have a black box. We just heard about aircraft, and I guess you could compare it to this. We get a lot of data. We can really analyze for everything. Typical energy consumption is what you're seeing here, the distribution of energy consumption in the graph. And we spend about 1,600 kilowatt hours on a round trip. That means that we can sail that round trip for just 108 Australian dollars. And that's really something that people take notice of. The E-ferry is emission-free in operation, like I said, and we have calculated that we save 2,500 tons of CO2 per year. So 2,500 of those balloons you see over on the right, full of CO2. A little less on a standard Danish grid because a standard Danish grid is not as green as it is here on Ærø. But as you people all know, when you have an energy efficiency which is very high, you will still be reducing, even if your grid mix is completely fossil based. 85% from transformer to propeller is our efficiency, and we are very happy about that. It was right on our projections, but we're still very happy about it. And so the good news here is that while we're saving the world, as I like to say, we are actually also saving a bit of money. On the left, you see Ellen 2. The reason we write Ellen 2 is because the innovation process that we went through to build the Ellen was considerable, and we spent a lot of money. So in our evaluation report, we simply looked at what building a new ferry would cost. That's the relevant thing. And the green curve is the E-ferry series, and then the blue and the black are diesel electric ferries and existing diesel ferry. And the first red arrow you can see, it says that the extra cost of buying the more expensive ferry can be paid back already after 4 years. But that means you have to have the charger and the infrastructure already in place. In 20 years from now, hopefully faster, but my hope is that all major ports have standardized or a couple of standardized chargers, so every operator doesn't have to build his own, which would be stupid, frankly. So we are trying to push nationally for a plan to really make this get on the way, and that requires that operators can think about buying ferries, not so much infrastructure on land. The second red arrow is if you have to build it yourself. And on the right is just a chart of battery prices, and you can see it just goes the right way. It gets cheaper and cheaper all the time. And not only the builders and the operator is very satisfied, our passengers truly are very satisfied. There were some, we were afraid of the psychological barrier, but there was no barrier, incredibly. We have not had a single passenger return in our surveys to say that they felt unsafe on the ferry. So they're extremely satisfied or very satisfied, basically. They're satisfied to sail environmentally friendly, and they're happy for the smooth sailing experience, which is really special. And here's a case for going fully electric. It's lower operating costs, lower life cycle economy, and improved comfort. There's a great potential for electric operations. At least 2,000 ferries that we have identified that could be replaced with electric. So it's just it's the future, and it's now. And I think my time is up.